and welcome to InfoSec Pros. I'm Kayne, Field CISO at Hyperproof, and I'm joined today by Mike Geehan, the head of security at Cockroach Labs. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Thank you, Kane.
Glad to have you on. Because this is a
I
live
appreciate it.
stream, if you've got a question for Mike or a question about Cockroach Labs or a question about Hyperproof, please drop them in the comments on either LinkedIn or on YouTube, and we'll take those as we go. And we see we've already got a comment from Devin. Thank you for the shout out there. So, Mike, before we get started, I just want to ask about something on your desk, and it's in the lower left corner, and it says 13 days on it. Mean time between, what does that say, SI?
Security incidents. So it's a little internal joke, just to increase awareness of security, make security a little more relatable internally. Is I started off with a physical manual one that I would have to, it's like the number of days since the last accident,
Yeah, exactly.
on a job site.
Yeah.
So I started doing that, and people enjoyed it. So kept it going. The interesting thing is that last one, it says 11 days. It's actually been a lot longer since we had a real security incident. The last one was a false positive, which are always nice to have.
That's very cool. And now I've got to ask, is that manually updated or does that come out of your SIEM or your SIM, depending on how you pronounce it?
I wish it was coming out of our SIM. No, I don't have that set up. What it comes out of is an app that I have set up on the phone. So once we have an incident, I get the incident going and then go through my app and update the little counter.
Well, I think that is very cool as a desk toy, as something to draw attention to security. And on today's show, we're going to talk about a lot of different topics. So if we seem to be a bit all over the place audience, that's because Mike and I have known each other for a little while here, and we tend to get talking. But if you've got questions you want to put Mike, or me, but honestly, he's the interesting one. Go ahead, just throw them at us. I'm going to start off with supply chain risk because that's kind of in the public consciousness right now. And Mike, I think that we can both agree that global supply chains are not getting less complicated. So, what are some challenges you've encountered in managing third-party risks, and what are you doing to adapt your strategies to actually address those issues?
No, interesting question. So, I mean, you can probably tell I'm a big fan of the Wheel of Time. It's a fantasy series where, one of the big things in there is a snake that's eating its own tail. That's what third-party supply risk seems like to me these days. Obviously, Cockroach Labs, we created a database product, transactional database, but we've also launched it as a cloud offering. Hyperproof itself also cloud offering, a SaaS-based tool. And with that, we have dependencies in our own tool. And then internally, we use, SaaS products pretty heavily. And the list of the dependencies just kind of goes down the chain. And so it does feel like this eternal cycle or eternal circle, maybe of hell. It certainly feels that way at times, where at the end of the day, you don't necessarily truly know what your full stack is dependent on. So you have, the breaches that we've had this year from, the Snowflake, and then we had the outage on CrowdStrike. All of those just call out the way any piece of your infrastructure, you pull one of them out and the whole thing can potentially come tumbling down. Right. We're lucky we weren't really impacted by either, not in any significant way. But, it does cause a lot of concern and a lot of work. And I just see it getting worse, especially with compliance from security questionnaires and new customers coming on board. They're going to start drilling down, asking not what is your infrastructure made up of, but what is your infrastructure dependent on? And that's an endless cycle and an onion I don't want to start trying to peel because it's never ending.
I laugh when you compared it to hell. I did a media interview earlier this week, and apparently the reporter, I guess, they're trying for clicks at this point. They chose to use as I called modern secure. It was our modern cybersecurity hellscape that we continuously inhabit. Is I think the phrase that they chose, and I was like, that's actually fairly accurate. I was talking about artificial intelligence because how that's generally made matters more difficult and potentially worse. But you bring up some interesting points there around vendor security questionnaires. Um, let's pivot on that one just for a second. Do you think that that space is going to improve and actually help? Is that helping companies to really manage their risk, or are we just checking the box and doing due diligence, which is what counsel tells us to do?
I mean, the official line is it does a lot of good. It brings a lot of value. The reality is it helps every company close deals. You've got to do them. It's one of the necessary evils of the space. The
Hmm.
way is the way I would say it. Are they valuable? Yeah, I mean they can be in that they can help you or your customers identify real key risk areas that are going to cause you concerns, right? They can uncover areas of if data localization or data sovereignty is a big issue. Oh, you use a particular tool that is housed in a location that you're not able to or not wanting your data to be in. So yeah, it can cause issues that way.
Hmm.
um, it can also be security theater. It's a compliance checkbox that, especially as you deal with larger and more complex environments, larger and more complex companies, they have to have you do it. But what value they get out of it at the end of the day is the company they're going to sign with secure enough for them to go with, for them to entrust us with their potentially business critical data.
And that's a really interesting point that I want to bring in something from the news recently when I'm thinking about complex environments and when I'm thinking about trust. Last month, there was an airline that wasn't able to fly airplanes, and there was a hospital that had turned patients some trouble doing banking. There were real estate agents who had trouble doing real estate. There were dentists who had trouble doing their jobs, and it was all caused by a company that previously folks hadn't heard of outside of like our community in cybersecurity. Of course, I'm talking about CrowdStrike, which was a pretty significant IT outage. And it was because they were in a lot of supply chains for a lot of companies. So this came up to a lot of CISOs as a question. Well, first of all, they thought it was an attack, and thank goodness that it was not. Um, but what steps are you taking now in light of that type of systemic risk in the environment where a significant player can be taken down? Like, what are you doing to enhance the resilience of your supply chain, and how are you keeping track of that in our cloud environment? Whereas we say like stuff changes fairly regularly, especially with SaaS vendors or with companies that regularly update their products.
I mean, the easy answer would be go with a competitor from CrowdStrike if you don't want to deal with that. But um, the reality is, there's only so much that you can do. Um, yeah, CrowdStrike. I mean, I honestly would debate if CrowdStrike would be considered to be part of a supply chain. It's part of a business ecosystem. And
Hmm.
we all need those. We've always had virus softwares on endpoints, or hopefully we have.
Well, we often
Um,
had, but not always.
right. But it exposes the fact that any tool that you have, big or small, can potentially cause you large scale issues. What are we doing about it? I mean, we've done a lot of work to understand what our ecosystem is, what SaaS tools we leverage, where they are, where they sit, how we leverage them. There's a lot that you can do from there are tools out there that will allow you to investigate and look at not just the uh, vendor risk, with a particular company. How big are they? Do they have a SOC 2 report? Do they have PCI or whatever the compliance, frameworks that you care about are? But above and beyond that, getting into the technical configuration of each of these tools. So how
Hmm.
well are they configured? Are you using MFA, on all of the accounts? Are you rotating passwords? All of the basic stuff that we know we should be doing. But, once you were dealing with dozens and dozens or hundreds of SaaS tools, it's almost impossible for a small, scrappy, startup or especially small scrappy security team to look at them all. So you're dependent on the business making the appropriate decisions and helping them understand what those risks are, and over time working through a prioritized list of each of the tools that you have and ensuring we're continuing to configure them as securely as we can and continuing to keep those controls up to date.
Do you think that the just bringing it back to security questionnaires, do you think that we're going to see an evolution or a change in security questionnaires in light of everything you just said? Like, does it have MFA? What is it composed out of? Kind of maybe even go into SBOMs. But do you think we're going to have like changes, material changes to questionnaires based on what happened with CrowdStrike?
God, I hope not. I hope not, but I think the reality is yes, we will. They're just going to become larger and more complicated, and cause compliance, security, and IT teams to have to jump through more hoops and take more time to complete them. And the issue that causes, it causes delays in sales cycles, right? It causes the timeline to close a deal to change potentially significantly if you're dealing with security questionnaires that are hundreds of questions long that go into items that potentially don't even apply. And that's some of the issues that I think we see is a lot of the security questionnaires try and cover such a wide range of technology and capabilities that no one company does it all or can do it all or is impacted by all, but you still have to answer the question. You can't just go not applicable because that's an area where they dive into, and it causes our compliance team a lot of churn and a lot of work in that space.
And I think it's more than just closing deals. I think also established customers that have right to audit. I was talking with a friend of mine earlier today, actually, and his company is being audited by a customer that, if I recall, their like annual recurring revenue is less than $50,000. Like it's kind of a small amount of money for them, realistically speaking. And yet they have in their contracts a right to audit. And so they've invoked their right to audit. And the CISO is now dealing with round 3 of the auditors sending another vendor security questionnaire because he answered the first set and they didn't like the answers, I guess. So they had some more questions and they sent the second set and got and answered those ones. Now set a third set. And this is in addition to all the security attestations like an ISO document and a SOC 2 document and Vuln and PEN and et cetera, the usual suspects.
Yeah.
And finally, it's coming to they're just going to send a team to do an in-person audit on a 50K deal. So I think that's for existing like contracts, not for a new customer. So do you think we're going to see more of that where customers may invoke their right to audit and to demand that retroactively people show that they're doing what they say they're doing?
I think in some cases, yes, but across the board, probably not, because it's expensive, and very few companies really have the time or money to be able to throw around on that concept. I think it's going to happen, but I think hopefully it's only on the larger, more complex deals. I mean, we get a lot of the security questionnaires for deals of all sizes and values, and it can be overwhelming once you have a deal that's a multi-million deal than a small company that's coming on for a $10,000 cloud deal that are asking you to fill out a 300 page or 300 question questionnaire. And it's like, at some point, where is the break even where you're spending more time and spending more money filling out the questionnaires than the deal may actually bring in? And it's a hard one because we obviously all want the deals to come through. We want the revenue. We need the revenue. But it's that eternal kind of struggle between, where we can most effectively put our time and limited resources compared to, what deals, we need to close. And you ask any salesperson, their deal is the most important deal, at least to them at that point. And it's a very hard one to fight against.
Yeah, I also want to shout out my friend Lisa Hall over at SafeBase. We had her on InfoSec Pros on the Road, at ISACA GRC. When that video goes up, if you want to learn more about like SafeBase's approach towards trust centers, definitely do check that video out. I hopefully will be able to get a link in the comments eventually to that video with Lisa of SafeBase. Do you think that's going to help us at all, Mike? That customers will start looking at trust centers as opposed to sending questionnaires?
I hope, but it's going to take time, right? I mean, we have a trust portal where we have standard answers to standard questions. It's a combination of educating both customers and especially customer compliance and risk teams
Mhm.
to take those questionnaires. And really, as an industry, if we can standardize on what the questions that we really actually care about are, and then we can all answer them, and then you can start to get to a point of more holistic ratings of where everyone stands in regards to that baseline security and compliance. Um, so I think it's a lot to do with educating the customers and having them mature in that space, and educating our sales teams as well to make sure that that's the first step, first place that they go to, that we draw the line in terms of yes, we can engage on security questionnaires, but if this covers 90% of the needs, perfect is the enemy of good enough in these situations. And take this, it's good. Let's move
Mhm.
forward and just close the deal.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. And yeah, I hope that we see some progress in that space, as I know a lot of CISOs and a lot of their teams spend a lot of time filling out
Yeah.
questionnaires that ultimately, like, one of my friends has brought up the point of what are the things that would kill a deal? Like, you could send a 1,600 question SIG and look at the answers, but what are the 5 things or 10 things in there that you actually care about that would kill a deal? And I think that that's the other thing in market maturation we have to move towards, is deciding how do we limit the scope of what we're sending. And like you said, agree on what are those hard things we have to talk about.
Yeah, but I think the issue is every customer is going to say something different is
Of
the
course.
critical thing that will kill a deal. And so, yeah, getting to that agreement, is probably harder than getting a government to sign off on a bill, without anyone opposing it, right? It's not easy to do.
That's very true. Yeah. Well, I want to bring in another thing. I was reading the news, I think it was either yesterday or early this morning, and Snowflake was in the news again. And they're still trying to say, well, I'm thinking of your MFA comments. Snowflake's still trying to say, well, actually, the reason y'all got breached is you didn't turn on MFA. And for those of you who are watching and aren't tracking what Snowflake is, they exfilled all of AT&T's customer call detail records, so CDRs. And if you're wondering what a CDR is it's metadata about who calls who when, and how long those calls can happen for. And so if you're, say, a nation state, it's absolute gold. Usually, nation states have had to get on premises or up in the cybers of telecoms to be able to do that. So, like, the fact that you could just exfil it out of Snowflake was gold for them. I'm sure somebody in China or North Korea was like, I just made my like quota for the month. I don't have to do any more work this month. But how do you think, Mike, that the Snowflake breach is going to influence the way that companies are approaching data governance and protection, particularly when we talk about third-party cloud services that can be stood up by literally anybody in an organization without any controls in place?
Well, I think it comes down to having those controls in place to make sure that they can't. The it's There's no that for all of these, there's no real good answer, right? To me, from the Snowflake side, yeah, they said that it wasn't them that were caused the breach, and it's this internal. I'm sure you've seen the meme of the Spider-Mans pointing at each other that it wasn't me, it was them.
Yes.
Um, and that's what a lot of these tend to feel like is, um, no one wants to take that liability on, as yes, it was us that caused this. From the AT&T perspective, I've seen enough AT&T breaches that if any of my data is in AT&T, which unfortunately it is, then it's out there, right? And it's just it's almost public. AT&T data is almost public domain data at this point. Um, a lot of it for us is it comes to when we're onboarding a vendor, making sure that we do the baseline due diligence of what data is going to be going into the system, where is it going to be residing, what levels of data localization or data sovereignty do we care about, and
Hmm.
can they actually implement. We face the same on our own platform, in terms of how customers are onboarding data onto Cockroach Cloud, and where that data is being stored, where it's being replicated to, where it's being backed up to. You get into all of the fun discussions of GDPR and the incoming India DPDPA, which is just an amazing acronym. Um, it's Digital Protection Act, I think it is. So being able to uh, give customers the level of flexibility about where their data is stored and how it's managed, is critical. Being able to understand the subprocessors that are in place for any particular tool. We had a tool where it was all hosted in AWS East 1, I think it was, and then the company changed their backend database and moved it to a company that was hosted on mainland China, which for
Ooh.
many firms is a no-no.
Mm-hmm.
And they did that, and they started to transition everyone's data, and
Oh.
so there was a lot of, okay, we have to back this out.
Uh-huh.
So it's being able to be upfront and understanding where your data is, and then as companies change their infrastructure, which is natural, normal. We all have
Mm-hmm.
to do it. Is having that control over. Look, no, that's not acceptable for us. We need to, either keep it on an old system, or if it's like we are doing this as a vendor, then we have to offboard and look at alternatives.
Is there also an angle here on the classic development versus production model where, companies will um, sometimes intentionally, sometimes well-meaning, and sometimes they don't know that they did it. They're just putting production data into their development environment as opposed to using tokenized or generalized data. Is that also a lesson that we should take away from Snowflake?
I mean, I'm sure there are dozens of lessons learned that we could take away from that. Is it a problem? Yes. Um, should we ever be doing it? Personally, no. I don't think you should ever use production data in a development environment. There are times and cases where to be able to do particular load testing or performance testing, you need that size of data, but
Hmm.
it's a slippery slope, right? Because as soon as you start using data that you don't own in any shape or form and in any way that's country or above and beyond the scope of contract that you have for that data, for that data ownership, um, nothing good can come from it.
Yeah, I think we've seen
Just
a little
nothing
bit of
good
that
can
as
come from it.
well on artificial intelligence, where companies are. Well, you talk to some AI companies, and they don't have the concept of a dev environment. That's just not a thing that exists in their heads, in their world. It's not a mentality where you tell them, "Well, we want to hook this up to our development environment for Slack," and they're like, "What is a development environment for Slack?" And we're like, "Well, we don't want to give you our stuff till we know if you're trustworthy." I think that's going to be a problem that we continue to see as well, right? You think that AI is going to probably just exacerbate matters there?
Uh, yes, I mean the easy answer is yes. I mean the one word answer would be yes, but um, the AI is the obviously the big topic of the day for many companies. um, and more we're seeing customers being concerned about what the internal use of AI means for the use of their data,
Hmm.
and define data in so many different ways. Is it the customer data? Is it data about the customer that you onboarded? Is it just metadata itself? So no one has a good definition of even what that means. But from the AI perspective, it needs a huge amount of information, of data, to be able to be trained as accurately as you can. Um, so the whole concept of development versus production and those things. I can understand the complexity that's involved there. Don't have a good answer for it, though. I really don't.
Well, I want to go down maybe a little more on that one, but we also have a question from the audience, and so I want to thank Teresa for sending in a question. So thank you. The question is, what are your thoughts on the use of AI? Very timely in trust and assurance platforms and trust portals to calculate risk scores, and particularly when AI can hallucinate or there can be inaccuracies.
Oh, good question. I mean, trust scores, yeah, risk scoring in general, no matter how quantifiable or quantified an approach that you use, from FAIR to, Monte Carlo simulations, all of the above, um, there's no way that you don't, as a company or as an individual, have your thumb on the scale a tiny little bit. There's always a level of subjectivity in it,
Hmm.
especially once it comes to what is the impact, how much is it really going to impact, the organization, be it reputationally, financially, or otherwise. And it really tends to be the financial cost that tends to be the scoring in all of these. Um, AI hallucinations in this space honestly wouldn't worry me that much, um, because no matter what scoring comes out, I would anticipate or expect that you're always going to have a human that is also validating it. And
Hmm.
so, it is it going to be 100% accurate? No, never. There are going to be hallucinations, but then again, we can hallucinate ourselves perfectly well without AI. And skew numbers, especially risk scoring, to what we feel matters the most at that particular time, which changes from day to day, from breach to breach, from news headline to news headline. It's always going to change. Um, but if anything, an AI-based model could at least give some standardization to the
Hmm.
to the process, compared to anything.
All right. Well, I want to thank our audience for submitting that question. So thank you again. And if you do have questions for Mike or for me, just please do drop them in the chat on either LinkedIn or on YouTube. We will take those live as we go. And Mike, you were talking about money and you were talking about time, and that, of course, makes me think of talking to boards. So CISOs often have struggled to communicate things like risk, like materiality, even though the SEC would like us all to do that at publicly traded companies, to communicate that to senior executives and to board members. So, based on your experience, what do you do as a CISO with your board to make sure that they understand your reports and that they're clear when we're addressing complicated issues like modern cybersecurity that also often change based on what's in the news cycle?
Um, I mean, my honest answer would be give me a month and I'll give you a better answer. Where we are as a company, the security reporting up to the board has been incorporated into the overall R&D engineering reporting. So we have never, this coming up next month is going to be the first time that we
Hmm.
formally present the security plan and the state of security and compliance. The way we're approaching it, though, is very much looking at what are the key risk areas that we face as a company, what are the potential impacts of them, and what are we both doing now, and what are we planning on doing in the future. To the earlier point of there's limited time, there's limited resources, hence money, that we can spend on any one problem, and you can look at any one key risk area, be it insider threat, be it, vulnerability management, be it, you know, potential data breaches or attacks on the platform, and you could go to level 11 on the paranoia scale about we have to do everything to fix this particular risk, knowing
Hmm.
that you can do it for all of them. You're never going to get through, all of them effectively. And so it's being able to prioritize based on return of investment. Where can we make the biggest impact to our risk scoring and to materially to the risk that the company faces, with the resources that we have, and call out clearly what are we also not doing right now. we may have it planned, we may have this concept of where we want to go and areas we need to focus on, but that we're not doing it because we prioritize something else above and beyond that. And as a security professional, as a security leader, I think the big thing there is being open to different points of view, being able to defend your point of view, saying this is the prioritization that we've put in place, and this is the reasoning why. And it shouldn't just be "I'm good, trust me," um, but being open to the alternative points of view of, oh, we haven't thought about X or Y, and so maybe we do need to pivot. Either deprioritize something else, or kindly ask the board for more money to be able to spend on whatever the other key area is. But there's only so much that you can do with it, especially once you have a team that's pretty well loaded in terms of workload. You can't
Hmm.
just, oh, give us $X100,000 and we can solve this problem, because to solve that problem means bringing on more resources, bringing in more tools, getting the processes in place. And so any change um, is going to take time. It's why I think in security you've got a lot of lagging indicators of the success of a security program. It's
Hmm.
harder to find leading ones because we're very much a reactive state, and it's hard to plan for what you don't know.
But when you're thinking about the different priorities of senior executives, and also sometimes the different backgrounds, I've talked to folks where they have senior managers who are telling the CISO, we need to do phishing resistant MFA, and at other companies, you have senior managers, senior leaders who are asking, like, how do I change my password again? So there's very much a spectrum there in terms of capabilities of understanding. So would you say that risk is really the common language that can help for consistent board level reporting and consistent communications with other senior leaders, or is there something else that works for you?
I think it's one of the easiest ones. It's one of the most common ones. It's risks are something that we all inherently understand as human beings, right? We don't think about it, but we're doing risk assessments, daily, hundreds, if not thousands of times on every decision that we make. From should I be eating this food at breakfast, as in, oh, I have a peanut allergy. If I eat it, is it going to kill me or not? Um, so, um, yeah, I think risk is an easy discussion. It's an easy way to bring people along on the same to be on the same page. There's an awareness as well. Security tends to be this black box, ivory tower. You have to do it because this is the secure way of doing it, but people don't necessarily understand the why, and so that um, ongoing education, making security relatable, right? Doing the little funny things at times to make security relatable, and increasing the awareness, and the old saying of security by default, or having a security a culture of security at a company, um, is well and good, and it's needed uh, across the board from top to bottom. And so that
Hmm.
can help educate people, and can help you have the more technical discussions. But I think the reality is, once you're talking to a board, the board members are probably on multiple boards. And so once they join the board meeting that you're presenting at, you have to page in all of the information into their brain about what they need to care about what the company is, where we are, what the status is, because they could be very very smart in the space, but if they're not thinking about your business,
Hmm.
the approach that they're taking could be potentially inappropriate for where you are and where you're trying to go as an organization.
And often you have to do that inside of 15 minutes, right? Like if
Yep.
you're lucky, maybe you get more than, well, I guess luck is a two-edged sword on that one, but you have to, as you say, page that information in very quickly with
Yes.
boards, and of course have backup supplemental for all of the questions that you might encounter. That's been your experience, right? Where you just have to try and like present, frame it up, and then here are the things that I'd like you to focus on. Anything else that helps focus the board's attention other than just talking about risk?
So, I mean, uh, a colleague who's helped me out in terms of how we're building out the board reporting at the moment, put it pretty effectively in that what you want is what is the one slide that has the key information that you want to provide, and
Hmm.
then subsequent slides where you dive into a little bit more detail, and then a little more detail where they need it. The reality is, once I'm going to be presenting to the board, I'm going to have maybe 9 or 10 slides that I would anticipate actually showing, with a backup of an extra 40 slides of once they dive into oh, what about this? We want more information on this particular thing. It's like, well, jump to slide 36. Here's all of the information that may be, useful. Um, so I think that's the best that we can do, right? Is keep it high level as to, as security professionals, we can spend hours talking about what's wrong or what could go wrong, as opposed to what's going right. How are we making improvements? How are we making progress? And I think that's what the board wants to understand is where are we making progress and where are we stalled and may need help.
That's a great point, especially for when you want to focus their attention on some part of the business. We have a couple audience questions that I want to take. One of them is a bit of a left curve, so we're going to hold that one for just a moment. There's a question from Adam, and the question is if you find business objectives from the board are clearly reaching security and risk teams to make the most informed judgments and quantifying and prioritizing risks for the organization.
I need to read that question again because Adam is that's an interesting question. Do you find the Are the business objectives clearly reaching security, and risk teams to make them? I hope so, right? In any organization, I'd hope so. I mean, the reality is, once it comes to executive communication and trickle down economy from an information perspective, um, the most interesting way I've seen it, described is you want to approach these things like the headline news, right? The 5 o'clock news. The
Hmm.
5 o'clock news starts with big headline, and then you've got the little ticker at the bottom that has several bullet points about the key news topics. And then they spend the time diving into, each one at its own time in its own way. So I think as leadership teams and as executives being able to distill the critical objectives that a board has, for a company, knowing that right, at the end of the day, the core objectives of a company should be driven by the executive team, and then being able to, as divisional leaders or as managers or as directors, wherever you are in the organization, being able to take those objectives and uh, I'm not going to say rewrite them, but rephrase them in a way that makes sense for the team that you're working on, be it security, be it legal, or be it any part of the organization. It's making the objectives of the company relatable to the work that an individual's doing.
Hmm. I think it's also it's cultural in nature, right? You have to see IT as a business partner or as a business enabler and not just a cost center. And the same thing with cybersecurity, where
Yep.
it's not just a money that, a money pit that tears come out of, but rather it can be a competitive differentiator for closing business, as we talked about earlier at the top of the show, right?
Yeah.
About the ability to
No,
get
absolutely.
through those security questionnaires quickly and truthfully. That's a competitive differentiator. But I'd say that the business objectives really only are going to get listened to from the board and senior leadership if they're relatable, like you said, and that there's that perception that, hey, we're in this together. It's not an adversarial relationship, or IT is just not a cost center, right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the times security, unfortunately, can be seen as the necessary pain that you have to pay. It's like insurance. You don't want
Hmm.
to have to pay your insurance bills, but when you need to call on it, you want to make sure that it's there, and you want to make sure that you're covered. And security gets that view a lot. A lot of people don't want to hear from security unless something is going wrong, because that's where you're stepping in as the firefighters to help resolve a situation. That's where I think it's important that companies and leaders engage from a security perspective, not just when things are going wrong, but when things are going right.
I like that. Yeah, it's not just always all negative news
Yep.
continuously. Well, I
Yeah,
want to
because
thank our
it's
audience for that
exhausting.
question. So that is a great question, Adam. And we have we're going to take a pivot now on this next question, and it's about books. And so we've already said you like the Wheel of Time series. The question is, can you share a book or three that was valuable along your path? And it's open. It says security related or not.
I mean, the flippant answer would be Game of Thrones in terms of how cutthroat the industry can be at times. Um, so that's my flippant answer. The real answer, I'd have to look over my shoulder. One is one that I've been very keen on that we've used at previous companies very effectively is Engineering a Safer World. It's a concept of system analysis where you're looking at any system, any product, or any work product as a system or a system of systems that is made up of components
Mm-hmm.
that is designed and developed to work in a particular way. And the kind of the system theoretical approach is, where can it go wrong? What are the losses, the unacceptable losses that can come from the system not working the way it's designed to? And then what are the hazard situations that can cause those losses? And so really looking at it more holistically than our traditional threat modeling you know approach, which if it's Stride or Pasta or whatever one you're using, how you look at it a little more holistically, and not just where can we be attacked and where can the system break, but what can go wrong that could cause any level of harm, be it financial harm to the company or reputational harm, all the way up to, can a system breaking cause someone to lose their life, a limb, or their liberty? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Those should be top of mind once we're looking and building out systems. Luckily, a lot of us don't deal with systems that can directly or hopefully indirectly cause that level of pain, but it happens.
It does. Yeah. All right. So
So
that's the
that would
first
turn
book.
Yeah, that would be the
Go ahead.
first one. Organizationally, I'm also a big fan of what's it called? Turning the Ship Around.
Hmm.
It's a book written by a retired Navy general, I think he was. He was a submarine commander, and those are, you want to talk about closed loop systems. The submarine is about as closed loop as you can possibly get,
Mm-hmm.
where trust is uh, not just hoped for, but absolutely required, for the survival of everyone. And it's basically how a submarine commander turned one of the worst performing subs, in the US fleet into one of the best ones. And it was done through the concept of not leader follower, but leader leader, where anyone could step up and go, I don't agree, or you're doing it wrong, right? And being able to call out issues as they see them, um, in a way that allowed people to grow and to avoid big catastrophic issues, and to allow individuals to grow into leaders. So that's one I'd be a big fan of.
And one more. Going for three.
Three. Do I have one more? I mean, I would say the subtle art of not giving up, but that's probably um, those really would be the two ones that I can think of as ones I highly recommend.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for Devin for asking that question. And we're getting towards fall now. I mean, it's raining here at the moment, so I'm in Bellingham, Washington, where we get our 6 weeks of summer, and then we immediately hit fall about mid-August, actually, and it just goes, drippy from there. And fall gets me thinking about budgeting. Some people leave budgeting till like November, and I always wonder how that goes for them. As we're looking towards 2025, what are your main considerations, Mike, when you're thinking about your cybersecurity budget?
I mean, first, I hate you from a weather perspective. I live down in the south where fall starts late November, early December, and summer starts, mid March. So it's not cooling down here at all. From a budgeting perspective, I think it's, it depends on your financial year, right?
Hmm.
If you're purely on a calendar year, then yes, you need to be looking at it kind of now or very, very shortly. For us, we're offset by a month. So, our financial year starts at the beginning of February. Um, in terms of what I'm looking at or what I'm concerned about or how I'd approach it,
Hmm.
um, it comes down to beginning with what budgets are we going to really have, you know so the it's all based on how the business is doing, right? Especially, as a private company, in terms of where's our revenue growth, and are we able to invest more, or are we at a steady state we have to maintain, which is always hard because every vendor is always trying to tag on the 5% tax year on year for inflation, um, uh, which just means budgets are constantly ballooning out. um, from us, we're looking at very much how we standardize the tools that we have, how
Hmm.
we get maximum value from the tools that we have. Too often, you can get a little trigger happy and buy a bunch of tools that look cool and are going to bring value. But the biggest hurdle that I've seen is, after you actually get the tool in house, how you get value out of it. And I think it's a lot that I think we could all say, you look across your IT stack or the security stack in particular, there are probably a handful of tools that you have that you've deployed about 30-40% of the capabilities. So you're
Hmm.
getting about maybe 30-40% of the value out of it. And that's good enough to get the return on investment that you wanted to have. But where can you really drive a lot more value out of the tools that you have, as opposed to having to look out for more tools to solve a particular problem? It's very easy to say, oh, we have this problem, there's this tool, go buy the tool, problem solved. But you have the resource cost of not only deploying the tool but how you manage it, right? And it's a resource cost, it's a cost of business that we don't always think about. Is the more tools you bring on, the more maintenance, the more tools you've got to patch and make sure we're secured. And those are always harder to defend, because you can't say, oh well, we're adding 3 new tools, so we need to add one more resource or two more
Hmm.
resources.
Hmm.
Once you're saying this tool is going to save us time and money, and it's a very complicated kind of equation to get through.
Yeah, and
um,
I can't help but wonder if it's going to be made more challenging this year, as in addition to like the vendor 5% annual recurring taxes, as you call it so nicely. I think we're going to start seeing AI being put into contracts by vendors, right? Where they're going to say, well, in addition to our current feature set, we've now added an AI, and there are a number of vendors that have already previously done that this year, so this is not new thinking. Do you think that's going to be a factor in your cybersecurity strategy, where a vendor that previously didn't have an AI is going to say, "Hey, look what we've added, and now you can pay more for it as well," and there's debatable ways of turning it off.
it's a double-edged sword in that one. I mean, there's some tools that I would love them to have an AI capability to be able to engage with the tool in a little more of a weirdly a human approach, as
Hmm.
opposed to having to write SQL statements or you know or complex algorithms to be able to get out what you need out of it. Is being able to engage in a little more clear text approach. That would be great. uh, I think it hits both vendors and customers. We're seeing customer contracts come through where AI is a bigger question as to what AI are we using and what does it mean for customer information and customer data.
Hmm.
From a tooling perspective, in terms of vendors that we're engaging with, I mean, I think the reality is, you give it 18 months or 2 years, every tool out there is going to have an AI component. If not, they're well behind the game, right? Because um, it's the current buzzword, it's the current trend where everyone needs it, and there's value from everything. Um, as long as they have an opt out opportunity,
Right.
then, or ideally an opt in to use it.
Mm.
Unlike was it Slack earlier this year that had incorporated, we can leverage all of your data for training our AI models unless you opt out. But they never really told anyone that directly, and so
Yeah,
there
that's
was
a
a big fuss that happened, and that's why I think being honest about it as a vendor and saying we have this capability, it could bring you value, opt in to use it. At that point, it gives businesses the real ability to own the level of complexity that they're willing to take on,
mm.
and the level of rigor around where their data is and how it's being secured.
You know, I want to agree with you, but I'm not sure we're going to see this inside of 2 years. And the reason why I say that is both Elliott Management as well as Goldman Sachs have put out reports this quarter on the topic of AI, mostly generative AI, but some other applications of AI, where ultimately they're questioning if there's a profit path for a lot of these companies that are just doing AI for the sake of AI. They're predicting that there's actually going to be a bit of we're kind of on a bit of a bubble right now where everybody's doing AI because it's the new shiny thing. I like your
Mhm.
comment though, Mike, that it has to have value and that it's an opt-in, because that'll also help consumers of these products, of cybersecurity products, to make informed decisions where they actually do genuinely see value.
No, I mean, I don't disagree. I think we are very much in an AI bubble that's continuing to expand, and at some point it's going to implode, as these bubbles always do. Especially if you went through the dot-com, bubble, a couple of years ago. Feels like yesterday. Um,
Does.
but I think right now every company out there is having to look at it, because if they're not, their executives and certainly the board are going to be asking why not, where could there be value that could be derived from using AI. The issue that I really see is AI is clearly a very data intensive field, and so that concept of data analysts and data scientists to be able to truly create a or leverage a model in a way that's going to bring value, that isn't going to have all the hallucinations, um, is it's an industry that's ripe for growth,
Mhm.
and once that hits maturity, then I think there's a lot of value that can come from it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I want to cover an audience comment that we got there. So it was about AI getting incorporated, and the comment is that they've been turning it on automatically. And the first question I ask after about a SOC 2 is about AI utilization, which I think is probably a pretty good workflow. And there is a question as well about SOC 2 from Fred. So thank you again for submitting these questions to us. The question is, given the increasing competition among audit firms in the SOC 2 space, that sounds pretty familiar. Yeah, many smaller firms seem to be lowering their prices, which may also lead to a compromise in the quality of audits and the rigor of the reports. So, how do you see this trend affecting the future of SOC 2, particularly in terms of maintaining high standards and trustworthiness? Mike, I want you to go first, and then I want to weigh in on this one as well.
Oh, honestly, Ken, you were much better situated to answer this question than I am. I think it's a very, very interesting question. I don't have a good answer though.
The way I look at it, as a former auditor, former assessor, I'd say the concern I have is systemic and long-term and generational. It's not just about SOC 2. So when I used to do audits and when I used to do assessments, we'd have these people called associate consultants or associates auditors, associate assessors. You get the idea. And they were people who had just come out of school, and that this is their first big job, and they're going to go and they're going to be handed this thing, and they've been handed a checklist, whatever report it is, and they're told, go read the thing. Whatever it is, here's your checklist of terms. So it's maybe if it says the word TLS and it doesn't say the word version, flag that as a thing that we're going to follow up on. And so somebody would direct their work to go do that, and by doing that, they'd learn how to become an auditor, and eventually they could get their green visor, they could get their clipboard, they could get their pen, and they could actually go talk to people. But it was a lot of that manual. Boring work that people just didn't want to do but needed to get done. So the reason I say this is systemic on this race to the bottom associated with SOC 2, as well as other reports, is a lot of that I think is getting farmed out to AI. And so if you have an artificial intelligence that's reading these reports and has the same checklist and the same training data, where's the next generation of auditors come from precisely? Like if people aren't learning how to do this, what's the senior auditor going to be in 20 years? Is it just a better AI that tells us as our machine overlords how we should conduct ourselves? I can't say I feel really good about that. I still think there needs to be a degree of human oversight. And there also still has to be an understanding of this is why we ask the question. Right? This is because the AI has no context clue on why the question is important. It just knows here's the question, here's the answers, here's the variations that are acceptable. Those are things that you can train people. I don't think that we can train that into an artificial intelligence.
I think if we do, we get Skynet. Not that Skynet's necessarily going to come from auditors. Probably be a little less violent if it is. But I think you're right in terms of it's very easy, even as humans, just to answer a checkbox. Look at security questionnaires. A lot of the times, it's just a checkbox answer that customers need. And once you dive into the whys, either they don't understand or they don't understand what your tool is, and so it's that we don't live in a world of black and white. It's very much a shades of gray, and being able to differentiate where you are and where you need to be in that field of mist is very, very hard.
Definitely. And just as we move towards the end, there is one more question, and it's kind of to your Skynet comment, actually. Although I will say there's, for those of you who 40K fans out there, one of my fandoms, in the future there is only audit is one of the best memes I have seen of just things that could go terribly wrong in the future. But the question from Richard here is, do you think AI will be more valuable to those acting maliciously?
I mean, I think most AI companies will say no because they set the guardrails around it to limit the malicious use. But like any system, any good adversary is going to find the way around the issue. I know there's people have said tried to have an AI, write me a malware. And it's like, I can't do that because it goes against my principles. And then they're like, oh, well, I'm not looking to use it. I'm looking to educate people on how they find malware.
Mm-hmm.
So, and by that, I need the code that malware would be. So can you generate code? And so can it be used maliciously? Yeah, as long as you're smart, it absolutely can be. It's like any tool, though. It all comes down to how you actually engage with it and how you use it.
Yeah, I agree. And I just on that one, I think that nation states are probably training their own AIs at this point to do, which is, from our perspective, is possibly malicious if you're on the receiving end. But if you've ever worked in the intelligence industry, right, dual use tools exist where it's a matter of perspective as to whether or not it's spyware or it's the tool that you use to do your job. But I think that AI is going to be a force accelerator in that space more than anything else.
I mean, you could say code breaking was one of the first hacking uses that we had, at least in modern times. And you could say, well, that's an evil, but it helped, shorten a war, right? So I think it all depends on what side of the seat you're sitting on as to if it's good or evil.
I think that's a very nuanced view, and I think that's where we're going to probably have to end it because we've just hit an hour. So I want to thank you for being on the show today, Mike. This is always so much
Yeah.
fun to talk to you. If you're watching this out there and you know somebody who we should have on the show, or alternatively you think, hey, you know what, I'd like to talk to that guy. He seems like fun. DM me directly or just drop a note in the comments. And with that, Mike, I want to really thank you again for joining us, and I want to thank our audience for tuning in on today's live stream.
Thank you for having me.